History is very familiar with the human brutality against each other. Do you ever think about living in the era of world wars and revolutions? You cannot dare think, because it's terrifying and horrible. Today, we will dive into history's wild and dark side. We're talking about none other than Benito Mussolini and the sinister things he pulled off during his reign. So be ready for a roller coaster through the diabolical deeds that still send shivers down our spines today. Let's get started. Born on July 29, 1893, Benito Mussolini experienced a complex upbringing marked by ideological tug-of-war between his father's socialism and his mother's Catholicism. The internal struggle played a pivotal role in shaping Mussolini's worldview. His childhood revealed early signs of rebellion and violence, foreshadowing the radical trajectory he would follow in adulthood. Raised in a household where conflicting political and religious beliefs clashed, Mussolini's young mind absorbed the tensions that would later fuel his authoritarian and extremist tendencies. The clash between socialism and Catholicism within his family left an indelible mark on his psyche, influencing his later political choices and leadership style. Mussolini's formative years set the stage for a turbulent life marked by ideological enthusiasm and a penchant for authoritarian rule. The rebellious and violent streaks that emerged during his childhood foreshadowed the tumultuous path he would embark upon, ultimately leaving an enduring impact on Italy and the world stage. Immigrating to Switzerland in 1902, Mussolini found fertile ground for radical political ideas. Immersed in a tumultuous environment, he ardently advocated for direct action and violent opposition, deeply influenced by his imprisonment and deportations. These experiences fueled his anti-establishment sentiments, shaping his political trajectory. By 1911, Mussolini emerged as a prominent critic of the Italian invasion of Libya, displaying an early divergence from mainstream views. However, the outbreak of World War I in 1914 marked a profound shift in his opinions. Once a critic, Mussolini aligned himself with nationalist fervor and supported Italy's entry into the war. This shift laid the foundation for his later fascist ideology, demonstrating his adaptability and opportunism in changing political landscapes. Mussolini's journey from anti-establishment ideals to wartime nationalism foreshadowed his role as a critical architect of Italian fascism in the tumultuous years to come. In 1914, Mussolini's fervent support for war resulted in his suspension from the socialist newspaper Avanti. Undeterred by the setback, he took a bold step by founding his newspaper Il Popolo d'Italia, where he passionately advocated for Italia's participation in the war. Despite initial opposition, Mussolini's charisma and persuasive abilities gradually won over supporters, enabling him to rise to prominence. His unwavering dedication to the pro-war cause and practical communication skills propelled him into a position of influence. Eventually, Mussolini became a prominent figure in the journalistic sphere and assumed the editorial role in Avanti, Italy's leading socialist newspaper. This remarkable turn of events showcased Mussolini's ability to navigate the complex political landscape, transforming from a suspended journalist to a key player in shaping Italy's political narrative during a critical historical period. In October 1922, the fascist movement led by Mussolini orchestrated the March on Rome, supported by the notorious Black Shirts. Despite the Italian government's hesitance to employ force, Mussolini successfully seized power without bloodshed. This pivotal event marked the ascent of the charismatic leader, and on October 31, 1922, at the age of 39, Mussolini assumed the role of Italy's prime minister. The March on Rome demonstrated Mussolini's ability to exploit political unrest and capitalize on the fear of a communist uprising. The government's failure to take decisive action played into Mussolini's hands, allowing him to consolidate power and reshape the political landscape. Mussolini's appointment as prime minister in 1922 laid the foundation for his authoritarian rule and the establishment of the fascist regime that would leave an indelible mark on Italy's history. During his tenure, Mussolini grappled with the challenge of limited support from fascist deputies. This prompted him in 1923 to enact the Asero Law, a strategic move to secure political dominance. The law stipulated that a party receiving more than 25% of the vote would be granted two-thirds of parliamentary seats, consolidating power in favor of the majority. The 1924 election, marred by incidents of violence and intimidation, proved pivotal for Mussolini. The tactics employed solidified fascist control, quashing any remnants of political opposition. The manipulation of electoral processes, coupled with the strong-arm tactics of the fascists, marked a turning point in Italian politics, rendering Mussolini's regime increasingly unassailable. Despite the challenges, Mussolini's shrewd political maneuvering allowed him to maintain an iron grip on power during this period. In 1925, Mussolini asserted his authority by declaring himself El Duce, assuming complete responsibility for the violence and suppression that characterized his regime. The infamous murder of socialist politician Giacomo Matteotti in 1924 briefly posed a threat to Mussolini's leadership. Matteotti's death raised concerns both within Italy and internationally, prompting condemnation of the fascist regime. However, the lack of widespread support for the socialists proved advantageous for Mussolini. The absence of a unified opposition enabled him to consolidate his control over Italy, suppressing dissent and solidifying his authoritarian rule. Mussolini's ability to weather the storm following Matteotti's murder showcased his political astuteness and the strategic manipulation of the political landscape. Despite external criticism and internal discontent, Mussolini's regime continued its trajectory towards dictatorial rule. The declaration of El Duce marked a turning point in Italian history, solidifying Mussolini's grip on power and setting the stage for further authoritarian measures in the years to come. In 1926, Mussolini's regime intensified its control over Italy by outlawing all opposition parties. This move marked a significant tightening of the government's grip on power. To stifle dissent, strict press controls and censorship campaigns were imposed, limiting the dissemination of information that contradicted the regime's narrative. Political opponents faced imprisonment as Mussolini sought to eliminate any challenges to his authority. Mussolini engaged in diplomatic agreements to further neutralize potential adversaries, even reaching an understanding with the Pope to silence criticism. This collaboration with the Vatican aimed to eliminate dissenting voices that could challenge the fascist regime. The suppression of opposition, combined with stringent press regulations and strategic alliances, solidified Mussolini's authoritarian rule, creating an environment where dissent was quashed and the regime's narrative remained unchallenged. Mussolini implemented a multifaceted economic strategy to curb inflation and boost agricultural output. By 1939, his regime had established considerable control over the Italian economy, implementing policies to achieve stability. The economic agenda prioritized state intervention to address inflationary pressures, fostering a controlled economic environment. In tandem with economic initiatives, Mussolini pursued a comprehensive social agenda to mold Italian society into a fascist model. Educational reforms were vital to instill fascist ideals and values among the youth. Mussolini utilized youth groups as a tool for ideological indoctrination, fostering loyalty to the regime from an early age. Furthermore, social engineering extended to demographic policies, incentivizing marriage and childbirth to strengthen the nation. Mussolini sought to shape a cohesive and disciplined society aligned with fascist principles. The interplay of economic and social strategies under Mussolini's rule aimed at consolidating political power and reshaping the fabric of Italian society by fascist ideology. Internationally, Mussolini harbored dreams of resurrecting Italy's ancient grandeur by forging a new Roman Empire. Fueled by expansionist ambitions, he initiated military campaigns in Libya, driven by the aspiration to establish a powerful Italian colonial empire in North Africa. Throughout the tumultuous span from 1922 to 1945, Mussolini's dictatorship significantly impacted Italy, imprinting a lasting legacy on its political, economic, and social fabric. His reign serves as a stark reminder of the hazards associated with totalitarian regimes and the far-reaching repercussions of unbridled power. Though ultimately thwarted, Mussolini's vision of a revamped Roman Empire continues to echo in historical reflections, offering insights into the complexities and consequences of aggressive nationalism. His era underscores the enduring importance of vigilance against autocratic rule and preserving democratic values to safeguard against the recurrence of such perilous chapters in history. Mussolini's military campaigns in Libya left a dark legacy marked by excessive brutality. Engaged in a fierce battle with Libyan rebels, his forces utilized gas attacks, establishing concentration camps, and engaged in wholesale massacres of civilians. This ruthless approach defined the conflict, staining the historical record with atrocities. The toll on the Libyan population was devastating, with over 50,000 lives lost, primarily among civilians. The brutality extended beyond mere casualties, as tens of thousands were forcibly displaced, adding a humanitarian crisis to the horrors of war. Mussolini's pursuit of dominance in the region was marred by disregarding the fundamental rights and lives of those caught in the crossfire. This chapter in history serves as a reminder of the human cost of unchecked aggression and the tragic consequences when warfare descends into unchecked brutality. The scars left by Mussolini's forces in Libya underscore the importance of preserving peace and human rights in times of conflict. In pursuit of territorial expansion, Mussolini directed his ambitions towards Ethiopia, an uncolonized African region. This strategic move unfolded in 1935 as a formidable Italian force comprising 200,000 soldiers crossed the border from Italian Eritrea into Ethiopia. Mussolini's military strategy proved decisive, utilizing heavy artillery, air superiority, and gas attacks to establish Italian dominance over the region. The campaign showcased the overwhelming strength of the Italian forces, effectively securing Mussolini's vision of a new Italian colony in Ethiopia. The invasion marked a significant chapter in Mussolini's pursuit of imperial aspirations, reflecting his regime's assertive and aggressive nature. Emperor Haile Selassie was at the forefront of a desperate offensive in March 1936 during the fierce battle at Maichu. Despite the valiant efforts of Ethiopian resistance, Mussolini's forces ultimately prevailed, achieving their ambitious goals in the conflict. Mussolini, buoyed by his triumph, declared Italy to have established a fascist empire. The Battle of Maichu is a testament to the resilience of Haile Selassie's forces, who fought fiercely to protect Ethiopian sovereignty. However, faced with overwhelming odds and Mussolini's military superiority, the emperor's offensive ultimately proved unsuccessful. Mussolini's victory at Maichu represented a significant milestone in his expansionist agenda. His declaration of Italy as a fascist empire reflected the growing influence of fascist ideologies during this tumultuous period in history. The events surrounding the Battle of Maichu underscored the complex power dynamics and geopolitical struggles that characterized the prelude to World War II. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War emerged as a prelude to the collaborative efforts between Mussolini and Hitler. Supporting the nationalist forces in Spain, both leaders solidified their alliance during this tumultuous conflict. The Spanish Civil War provided a testing ground for their shared ideologies and military strategies, allowing them to assess each other's commitment to the fascist cause. The conclusion of the Spanish Civil War was influenced by Mussolini and Hitler's backing of the nationalist forces, which also set the stage for more aggressive actions. The collaboration during this conflict sowed the seeds for the formalization of the Roman-Berlin Axis and the making of the Pact of Steel in 1939. The Spanish Civil War thus became a pivotal chapter in the history of fascist cooperation, marking the beginning of a more significant and ominous alliance that would shape the course of European history in the years leading up to World War II. As tensions heightened in Europe, Mussolini aligned himself with Hitler's expansionist ambitions. 1939 marked a pivotal moment as the Pact of Steel solidified the Rome-Berlin Axis, establishing a commitment between Germany and Italy for mutual military aid. The spark that ignited World War II occurred when Hitler invaded Poland later that same year. Despite the unfolding conflict, Mussolini initially opted to remain on the sidelines, choosing not to involve Italy in the early stages of the war. He echoed Mussolini's cautious stance during this era of relative restraint from direct military actions as he evaluated the changing dynamics of the worldwide battle. However, the subsequent course of events would eventually draw Italy into the war, altering the trajectory of Mussolini's role in one of the most tumultuous periods in modern history. In 1940, Italy's military engagement in World War II under Mussolini's leadership proved lackluster. The invasion of Greece and various campaigns in Africa highlighted the inadequacies of Mussolini's military aspirations. Despite initial aggression, Italian forces struggled, exposing weakness in strategy and execution. As the war progressed, by 1943, a combination of Allied victories and internal dissent eroded Mussolini's grip on power. The Italian military faced setbacks on multiple fronts, contributing to the diminishing influence of El Duce. Faced with mounting challenges and a changing tide of the war, Mussolini's regime crumbled. The turning point came when Italy, grappling with internal turmoil and realizing its military limitations, signed an armistice with the Allies. Mussolini's arrest marked the end of his once authoritative rule, and the truce reflected Italy's shift away from its earlier alliance. This pivotal historical moment has demonstrated the repercussions of overambitious military ventures and the consequences of aligning with the losing side in a global conflict. Hitler, enraged by Italy's peace with the Allies, launched Operation AXA in 1943, marking a German invasion to reinstate Mussolini to power. In the aftermath, Mussolini assumed leadership over a newly established Italian Socialist Republic, effectively a puppet state under German dominance. The operation underscored Hitler's determination to maintain control over his fascist ally and solidify their collaboration during a critical period of World War II. The German intervention in Italy reflected the complexities of Axis relations, revealing a power dynamic that ultimately favored Germany. Once a dictator, Mussolini found himself relegated to a subservient role in a regime largely dictated by German influence. In his last year, Benito Mussolini endured the virtual house arrest, observing the unraveling of his regime. The Allied liberation of Italy brought to light Mussolini's legacy of suffering, terror, and death. Executed in April 1945, the violent demise of El Duce marked the conclusion of his authoritarian rule, leaving a sinister imprint that echoes through history to the present day. The repercussions of Mussolini's actions during World War II and his collaboration with Hitler serve as a reminder of the destructive consequences of fascist ideologies. The enduring impact of his reign prompts reflection on the atrocities committed under his leadership. It emphasizes the importance of learning from history to prevent the recurrence of such dark chapters in human civilization. How do you feel now after all these Mussolini actions? Write in the comment box and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of dark history.